My name is Vanessa Cole, and I am 30 years old. 11 years ago, my mother kicked me out of our home for refusing to follow the path she had planned for me. Today, I stepped out of my private jet with my 5-year-old daughter and watched the shock on her face as I returned to the town that once buried me in shame. The wheels touched down on the runway at Fairfield County Air Park just after noon. It was the same small airport my father used to drive past without ever stopping, the one he said was only for people who wanted to be seen landing more than arriving. Now I was here descending the steps of a Cessna Citation in tailored heels, a wool coat, and with Maya's tiny hand gripping mine. We were met by silence. The cold November air pressed against my skin, but it was the memory of that night 11 years ago that truly chilled me. I had just turned 19, accepted into NYU's finance program, and eager to begin something that felt like mine. But when I told my parents I wouldn't marry Ethan Langford, the son of a hedge fund partner, and the boy they'd picked out for me since I was 16, my mother slapped me so hard I saw stars. "If you walk out that door, Vanessa, do not come back." And I didn't. I spent the next decade building something from the ashes of that decision. Starting with nights of sleeping in borrowed spaces and days of temp work, I clawed my way through college internships and investment deals no one believed I could land. By 28, I had founded Cole Strategic Holdings, a boutique investment firm that now managed over $200 million in client assets. I became what my parents always claimed to value: successful, well-respected, powerful. But I did it without their money, without their approval, and most painfully, without their love. Until last week, I hadn't planned on ever returning. But a message from my Aunt Teresa changed that. A simple note in my inbox. "Your father had surgery. He's recovering. Figured you'd want to know." I hadn't responded. I hadn't cried. I didn't even tell my husband, Michael. But that night, while putting Maya to bed, she looked up at me and asked a question I wasn't ready for. "Mommy, why don't I have grandparents?" The next morning, I booked the jet. Now here we were, back in the place that had once swallowed my voice whole. I watched Maya skip ahead to the car, her small suitcase bouncing behind her. She had no idea about the weight this town carried. To her, it was just an adventure. To me, it was a confrontation with ghosts. The black SUV waiting by the tarmac was driven by a man named Louis, gray-haired, discreet, and ex-military. He opened the door and nodded as we entered. "Hotel is ready." "You sure you don't want me to call ahead?" he asked quietly. "No," I said. "They'll see me when they see me." As we pulled out of the air park and onto the narrow 2-lane road leading toward Westbridge, I looked out at the familiar landscape. The houses were smaller than I remembered. The trees more bare. The sky less intimidating. My phone buzzed on the seat beside me. A message from Audrey Jackson, my best friend since 3rd grade. "You really doing this?" "Yes," I replied. Damn. Brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt composed, sharp-edged, and armored in designer fabric. But under that was a tremor I couldn't silence. I wasn't back to make peace. I wasn't here to forgive. I was here to show them what they gave up. My daughter rested her head on my lap and closed her eyes. Her curls, soft and wild, reminded me of the little girl I used to be before rules and expectations carved out pieces of me. I leaned my head back and closed my eyes too. Tomorrow, I would drive up to the house I was thrown out of. I would ring the same bell my mother had insisted on replacing because the old one sounded cheap. I would look them both in the eye. And I would not ask for anything. I wasn't here to be welcomed. I was here to be seen. I didn't leave home with a plan. I left with a bruised cheek, a backpack, and $300 my father shoved into my hand as he opened the door. He didn't say goodbye. Just take care of yourself. That night, I took a bus into Manhattan and called Audrey from a payphone outside the Port Authority. Her parents let me crash in their guest room for 2 weeks. After that, I rotated between friends' couches, campus lounges, and cheap hostels. I wore the same 3 outfits on repeat and hand-washed them in sinks. Everything I owned fit inside one torn gym bag. Getting into NYU had felt like a miracle. Staying there became a war. The financial aid package covered part of tuition. For the rest, I hustled. I worked nights at a 24-hour diner near Union Square, morning shifts at a used bookstore in the East Village, weekends babysitting two kids whose parents were so exhausted they barely noticed when I fell asleep on their couch. I took classes during the day: corporate finance, macroeconomics, behavioral markets. I sat in the back, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't want anyone to see how tired I looked. I drank stale coffee, ate dollar pizza slices, and kept a spreadsheet of every cent I spent. No one in my life then knew what I had walked away from. I didn't talk about Westbridge. I didn't talk about the Langfords, the forced dinners, or the life I had been groomed for. I let those memories rot in the dark, hoping they'd decay on their own. But they didn't. They just hardened. My mother had always told me the world wasn't kind to women who made noise. Power, she'd say, is knowing when to be silent. That advice haunted me in every boardroom I walked into during my internships. I followed none of it. By 21, I had landed a summer position at an investment firm downtown. I was the only intern who didn't come from Ivy League lineage or carry a last name that opened doors. I worked twice as hard to be seen as half as good. The partner I was assigned to, Martin Grant, didn't remember my name for the first 2 months. He called me the spreadsheet girl until the day I corrected a major error in his portfolio projection. After that, he remembered, and so did his clients. By the end of that summer, he pulled me aside. "You've got teeth," he said. "You hungry?" "Yes," I answered. "Always." He gave me a recommendation that helped me land a post-grad job as a junior analyst at his rival firm. No hard feelings, he told me. Loyalties for the soft. I graduated with a double major and no debt. My diploma was mailed to Audrey's apartment because I didn't have a permanent address. I didn't walk the stage. My parents never asked where I was. The next few years were a blur of 15-hour days, red-eye flights, and back-to-back meetings. I got promoted, then poached, then promoted again. I learned to negotiate like I belonged in every room, even when the room was full of men twice my age calling me kiddo. At 26, I made partner at a boutique investment firm. At 28, I walked away from it all and started Cole Strategic Holdings from a one-bedroom apartment in Queens. Everyone said I was crazy, but I had clients once who believed in me, not just the firm's logo. I had instincts sharpened by hunger, and I had nothing to lose. My first year, I cleared 6 figures. My second, just over $1 million in managed assets. I took risks others wouldn't. I backed minority-led startups, women founders, clean tech, when everyone else was betting on oil. I didn't win every time, but I won enough. Then came the third year when I met Michael. He wasn't like the finance guys I knew. He was steady, quiet, and deeply unimpressed by wealth. He taught high school history in Brooklyn and made more of an impact in one classroom than I had in a dozen boardrooms. I loved that about him. Still do. We married a year later in a courthouse ceremony. No invitations, no announcements. Just us 2 witnesses and a vow to build a different kind of family than the one I came from. When Maya was born, I was terrified. Terrified I'd become my mother, that I'd pass down her obsessions with status, her sharp words, her inability to apologize. But from the moment I held Maya, I knew something had changed. I didn't want to mold her. I wanted to protect her freedom to become whoever she wanted. I built a nursery next to my home office. I brought her to meetings strapped to my chest in a baby carrier. My clients adjusted or they didn't. The ones who stayed became loyal. Motherhood didn't weaken me. It clarified me. And yet, despite everything I had built, every cent, every deal, every quiet morning with Maya curled against my chest, there was a corner of my mind that never stopped replaying that night. The look on my mother's face. The click of the door behind me. The silence that followed. I told myself I didn't care, that I didn't need them. But Maya's question, Why don't I have grandparents broke something open? I didn't want her to grow up with inherited silence. I didn't want her to carry my shame as if it belonged to her. And so I booked the jet. Tomorrow I would drive to the house that cast me out and knock on their door. Not as a beggar, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a woman who built a life they said was impossible. I don't know what I expected when I turned onto Windmere Lane, but it wasn't that everything would look the same. The neighborhood still had perfectly trimmed hedges and ornamental mailboxes. The same old maple tree stood guard near the bend in the road, tall and indifferent. Nothing had changed. Except me. The house came into view like a memory pulled from the fog, white shutters, brick facade, and a blue front door that had once slammed shut behind me. My mother's prized rose bushes lined the walkway. I parked across the street and sat for a moment, letting the engine idle while Maya doodled quietly in the back seat. My heart wasn't racing. I wasn't afraid. I felt still. Maya looked up. "Is this Grandma's house?" I nodded. "Yes, but we're not going in yet." I didn't want her first impression of them to be a slammed door or an awkward silence. I'd come to deliver something, not to plead. I stepped out of the car, heels clicking on the pavement, and retrieved a small white envelope from the glove compartment. Inside was a photo of Maya, her birth certificate, and a letter I had written the night before. Not to ask for anything, just to say I exist. She exists. And whether you care or not, we are real. I crossed the street alone. Maya watched from the car window. I walked slowly, not out of fear, but out of intention. Every step was a choice I made freely, something I didn't get to do the first time I left this house. I rang the bell. I could hear it echo inside the same chime I remembered from childhood. A shadow passed by the frosted window. Then another. Finally, the door creaked open. My mother stood there in a cream sweater set and pearls. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, styled with precision. She blinked twice before recognition set in. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I smiled politely. "Hi, Claire," I said. "It's been a while." She stared at me like I was a ghost. "Vanessa." I nodded and held out the envelope. "I'm not here to stay. I'm not here to fight. I just wanted you to have this." She looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "It's not money," I added with a sharper edge than I intended. "It's about Maya. She's in the car." At that, her eyes flicked past me toward the street. She couldn't see through the tinted windows. I didn't offer to open the door. "She's your granddaughter," I said. "I thought you might want to know." Still, Claire didn't move. She stood stiffly, arms crossed, lips pressed into a line. The same posture she had when I told her I wouldn't cancel my NYU admission. My father appeared behind her in the hallway, slower to react. He looked older, gray streaks in his hair, softer around the eyes, but otherwise untouched by time. When he saw me, his expression froze. "Vanessa," he said. "What are you doing here?" I turned to him calmly. "Dropping something off." My mother finally reached out and took the envelope. She held it like it was something dangerous. "We didn't know where you were," she said. "You didn't look," I answered. My father shifted uncomfortably. It was a hard time for everyone. "I know. I lived it." For a few seconds, no one spoke. Just the sound of birds chirping in the hedges and the low hum of Maya's tablet from inside the car. "I'm not here to reopen old wounds," I said, already turning to leave. "I just wanted you to know she exists. I wanted her to know I tried." Vanessa, my mother, started, but I was already walking away. I didn't expect them to call. I didn't want a dramatic reunion. I just wanted the silence to break, for the erasure to stop. Back in the car, Maya looked up. "Did they say hi?" I hesitated. "Not yet. Maybe someday." She nodded like she understood more than a child should. We drove to the hotel I'd booked downtown, a quiet corner suite with 2 beds and a window view of the river. I ordered room service and let Maya choose whatever she wanted from the menu. Chicken nuggets and chocolate cake, of course. That night, while she slept curled beside me, I sat by the window and stared at the skyline. I didn't feel closure. I didn't feel victorious. But I felt rooted in my choices, in my dignity, in the family I had built without permission. The next morning, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. We read the letter. The photo is beautiful. Can we meet her no name? Just that? I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. Not yet. The first apartment I lived in after leaving home was barely more than a box with windows. A narrow studio above a laundromat that always smelled faintly of detergent and burnt dryer lint. I had 2 plates, 1 fork, a sleeping bag instead of a bed, and a hot plate instead of a stove. I didn't care. It was mine. I found it through a community college bulletin board and paid for it with a combination of savings from tutoring during high school and a cashier job at a 24-hour drugstore. I had enrolled in an evening intro to economics class the week I moved in. It was the only one I could afford. No one knew where I was. I'd blocked my parents, deleted every social account they could find, and disappeared from the version of myself they had spent years curating. I still had nightmares about being dragged back, married off like a chess piece. But in the daylight, I clung to every taste of freedom like oxygen. The days blurred. Work, yes, study, sleep, study, repeat. I was always tired, but tired was better than trapped. I still remember the first time I considered giving up. It was a Thursday. My manager had accused me of misplacing a $20 bill from the till. I hadn't, but I was suspended anyway. That night, the hot plate shorted out and blew the fuse for the entire apartment. I ate cereal with warm milk and cried for the first time in weeks. I stared at my phone. My mother's number was still there, just digits, no name. My finger hovered over it. What if I called and promised to do what they wanted? What if I could go back to clean sheets and hot dinners and a family that on the surface looked perfect? But then I looked around that dingy apartment, the peeling wallpaper, the stack of textbooks, my student ID on the table. My life wasn't much, but it was mine. So instead, I called the only person I still trusted, Lydia. We hadn't spoken in nearly 6 months. But when she picked up and I burst into tears, she didn't hesitate. "I'm driving up this weekend," she said, "and I'm bringing groceries. Text me your address." That weekend, she showed up with peanut butter frozen dumplings, a case of instant noodles, and enough frozen meals to fill my mini fridge. She didn't comment on the mildew in the shower or the absence of furniture. She just hugged me, sat on the floor, and helped me sort through overdue bills. "I don't think I can do this," I whispered. "You're already doing it," she said. "And you're not doing it alone anymore." After that, things didn't magically get easier, but they became more bearable. I picked up 2 part-time jobs. I took surveys online for pennies. I sold old textbooks. Slowly, my bank account stabilized. I learned how to stretch $20 into a week's worth of groceries. I memorized the sales cycle at the store down the street. And I kept studying. I transferred to a university program after 2 years. I got a scholarship, just partial, but it was enough. I switched majors to finance and investment theory. Numbers made sense to me. Spreadsheets felt like puzzles I could solve. Unlike people, they were consistent, predictable. During my senior year, I applied for an internship at a boutique investment firm. I didn't think I'd get it. I didn't have the pedigree, the connections, the glossy resume, but my grades were stellar, my essay raw and honest, and my interviewer, an older Black woman named Evelyn Marks, took a chance on me. "You remind me of myself," she said. "Except you're braver." She became my first real mentor. At first, I just filed papers and got coffee, but I listened. I took notes. I asked questions. I stayed late. I started suggesting small improvements to portfolio tracking systems, then client management structures. They implemented 2 of my suggestions before my internship ended. When I graduated, they hired me full-time. 2 years later, I was promoted. 3 years after that, I launched my own firm with Evelyn as my silent partner and co-investor. Cole Financial Strategies started in a shared workspace with a budget barely large enough to cover licensing and legal paperwork. I slept 4 hours a night and worked the rest. I built the website myself. Cold called potential clients, held investment seminars at libraries and coffee shops, advised small businesses for free just to prove I could. The breakthrough came when I helped a local nonprofit restructure their endowment fund, increasing their 5-year projected returns by nearly 20%. Word spread. Clients multiplied. By my 4th year, I had an office, a real one, with my name on the door and 3 full-time employees. I paid them well. I remembered what it was like to choose between food and heat. I would never ask that sacrifice from someone again. People started calling me self-made. I hated that word. No one is self-made. I had Lydia. I had Evelyn. I had every underpaid professor who stayed late to answer one more question. Every barista who let me stay past closing to finish a midterm. Every woman who told me I could. And then came Maya. She wasn't planned. She wasn't even supposed to be possible according to one doctor. But life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Her father was a client turned friend. A good man who wasn't ready to be a father. We parted ways with civility and clarity. I didn't panic when I found out. I was afraid, but not defeated. I had built everything from the ground up once. I could do it again. Pregnancy slowed me down. Motherhood changed my priorities. But I adapted. I turned one office into 3. I took meetings with a baby carrier slung over my shoulder. Maya's first words were mama and budget. People said I was lucky. They never saw the nights I cried while balancing payroll and a screaming infant, or the days I went without so Maya could have the better formula. They only saw the jet, the polished image, the success. But I never forgot where it started. With a girl in a tiny apartment with a broken hot plate and a dream no one believed in but her. Maya was 9 when she asked me the question I had been dreading for years. Mom, how come I don't have grandparents like my friends do? We were sitting on the couch after dinner, her small legs tucked under mine, a worn copy of Charlotte's Web balanced between us. Her eyes were big, curious, not accusing, just seeking truth in the only way children can. I didn't lie. I never lied to Maya. I told her the truth, the gentlest version. They weren't very kind to me, I said. And sometimes when people can't treat you with respect or love, the best thing you can do is walk away, even if they're your family. I hesitated, then nodded. Even then. She thought about it for a moment, then said quietly, I'm glad you chose you. I kissed the top of her head and told her I was too. That night, I sat in my office, staring out the window as the city lights blinked back at me. I thought of all the ways I could have rewritten that chapter of my life. All the ways I might have bent or broken to keep a connection with people who had never really seen me as anything but an extension of their will. And I felt no regret, only peace. Until the letter came. It arrived on a Wednesday. Thick cream envelope, my full name written in the familiar cursive I hadn't seen in over a decade. No return address. I almost threw it away. But something made me stop. A flicker of curiosity. Or maybe closure. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of expensive paper folded crisply in thirds. Vanessa, we heard about you. The business, the success, the articles. We saw the pictures. Your jet, your daughter. We're glad you're doing well. It must have taken a lot of hard work. We've had some difficulties. Financial ones. Your father is no longer working. The house is on the line. It would mean a lot if we could sit down, talk, maybe reconcile. Come home for Christmas. Love, Mom. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a thinly veiled request for help dressed in faux affection. I laughed. Loud, bitter, sharp. They wanted me now. Now that I had something they could take. Now that I was no longer a disappointment but an asset. I crumpled the letter and dropped it in the recycling bin. Then I walked out of my office into Maya's room and watched her sleep. She deserved better than this game. She deserved better than to be paraded as proof of their redemption. But the truth was, I was curious. Curious to see how they would face me now. Curious to see if they recognized what they had lost. So I made a decision. I would go. Not to make peace, not to forgive, but to show them that the girl they discarded had built an empire from the ground they buried her in. I made the arrangements quietly. I didn't tell Maya much, only that we were going to North Carolina for a few days. A short trip. A mom needs to handle something trip. She sensed there was more, but didn't press. We arrived on Christmas Eve. Private jet, tailored coat, Maya in her red dress curls tied with a satin bow. I could have rented a car. Chosen subtle. But subtle was not what they remembered. I wanted them to see what they threw away. The jet landed smoothly. A black car waited. I stepped out, heels clicking on the tarmac, the cold air biting and clean. My mother stood at the edge of the driveway, wrapped in a fur coat too thin for the weather lips painted with old habits. She saw me, and then she saw Maya. Her eyes widened, her hand fluttered to her mouth. "Vanessa," she breathed. "You look—" But she didn't finish the sentence. "Different," I offered. "Successful, unrecognizable, beautiful," she said instead, recovering quickly. "And this must be—" "Maya," I said. "My daughter. Your granddaughter." Maya stared up at her, polite but reserved. "Hi," she said softly. My mother looked like she might cry. I felt nothing. We stepped inside. The house hadn't changed. The same heavy chandelier, the same wallpaper, the same ghost of disapproval in the air. My father appeared from the hallway, his posture more hunched, his hair fully gray. He said my name like a question. I nodded. "Hello, Dad." We sat in the living room. No gifts, no food, just three people in a room pretending to be more than what they were. I let them talk first. They told me about Dad's job loss, the failing mortgage, the medical bills. They praised my success without asking a single question about how I achieved it. They complimented Maya without once using the word granddaughter. Then came the ask. "We were hoping," my mother began, "that now that you're in a position to help, you might consider assisting with the house, keeping it in the family." I almost laughed again. Instead, I looked at Maya, then back at them. "I built everything I have from nothing," I said. "No support, no family, no one. I did it with empty pockets and full nights. And when you had the chance to be there, you chose not to." "Vanessa," my father said. "It was complicated. We were afraid." "No," I cut him off. "You were cruel. You made a choice. And now I'm making mine." I stood up. Maya took my hand. I looked at them one last time. "This is the last Christmas you'll ever see me." And then I walked out. Not in anger, in power. Maya didn't ask questions in the car. She held my hand tightly, her tiny fingers wrapped around mine like roots seeking soil. I knew she felt the shift in me. Something had settled, or maybe something had finally been released. Back at the airport, the same driver opened the door. The same jet waited quiet and ready. We climbed in, buckled up, and within minutes we were rising back into the sky. I watched the earth shrink below us, my past, my childhood, that house of silence and conditional affection, and I felt a weight lift I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Back in Manhattan, the city greeted me like it always had, bright, indifferent, honest. It didn't care where I'd come from, only who I decided to become. I went home, tucked Maya into bed, heated leftover soup, sat at the kitchen counter flipping through the few photos I'd snapped Maya on the tarmac. Maya in her red dress, Maya, with her head tilted toward me, eyes steady, saying nothing but knowing everything. I posted just one photo, no caption, just me and Maya stepping out of the jet hand in hand. The response was instant. Friends, colleagues, old contacts, queen behavior. Iconic. The glow-up is real. But that wasn't why I posted it. I posted it because it was mine. My moment, my closure, my evidence. The next morning, I woke up to an email from my mother, Vanessa. I don't know what I expected. Maybe I thought time would soften things. Maybe I believed that you'd understand we did the best we could. But now I see we lost you. And maybe we never really had you to begin with. I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. Love, Mom. I didn't respond. I had nothing left to give her. Not even words. Instead, I called my lawyer. We finalized the paperwork I'd been considering for months, a formal trust fund for Maya. Ironclad, independent, no clauses, no family interference. Everything I had built would go to her and only her. A legacy not rooted in blood, but in intention. After the meeting, I walked to the cafe where I'd first sketched out the business plan for Solstice Capital. The air still smelled like burnt espresso and ambition. I sat in my favorite seat by the window, ordered the same black coffee, and pulled out my journal. At the top of the page, I wrote things I owe no one. And then I made a list. Explanations for leaving. Forgiveness they haven't earned. Access to Maya. My time. My empathy. My name. I closed the journal, exhaled, and felt something shift. A door locking. A season ending. The rest of December passed in a quiet rhythm. I didn't tell Maya much more about the visit. She didn't ask. But one night, as we made cookies in the kitchen, she said, "Grandma looked like she wanted something." I paused, wiping flour off my hands. She did. What was it? A do-over, I said. But not for me. For herself. Maya considered that, then asked, "Did you give it to her?" I looked at her so smart, so good, so hers, not theirs, and said, "No, baby. I gave it to us instead." She nodded. Good. Christmas morning was just us. No matching pajamas, no big tree, just a stack of gifts under a string of fairy lights and the smell of cinnamon rolls in the oven. Maya opened her presents with the kind of joy that only comes from safety. From knowing you're not being watched, weighed, or judged. I got her a telescope. She had been reading about stars. She looked at it like it was magic. Later that evening, we sat on the balcony, wrapped in blankets, the telescope aimed at the sky. "There it is," she whispered. "Orion." You know, I said softly. Orion had a hard life in the myths. He lost things. Fought monsters. Got betrayed. Maya turned to me. Did he still become a star? I smiled. Yes, he still became a star. She leaned against me, warm and small. I thought of everything they had tried to bury me with, and how I had used it all to build. I thought of the jet, the walk up their driveway, the way my voice didn't shake when I told them goodbye. I thought of Maya, of every choice I had made that led to this life where my daughter knew her worth not by what she was given, but by what she was never asked to sacrifice. And in that moment, I knew. I hadn't just won. I had ended the story. On my own terms. 2 weeks after the new year, I received a letter. Not an email. A real letter. Handwritten. The envelope was cream-colored, the handwriting careful and elegant in a way only my mother's could be. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. Inside, 5 short lines. Vanessa. If you ever decide you want to try again, we're here. We understand if you don't. We're proud of what you've become. Always, Mom, and no pleading, no revisionist history, no demands, just space. I put the letter in a drawer. some part of me softened. Just slightly. Not because I wanted reconciliation, but because they finally seemed to understand that it wasn't owed to them. That was a start. A week later, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership summit in Chicago. The theme was breaking cycles. I almost turned it down. The topic felt too raw, too close. But then I thought of Maya. I thought of the women in the audience who might be one choice away from either repeating the lives handed to them or starting something new. So I went. On stage, under the spotlight, I told them the truth. Not the polished version, not the LinkedIn bio, the real story. About being kicked out at 18, about working night shifts while studying, about the day I almost gave up, about building something from grit, not guidance, and about walking out of a jet hand in hand with my daughter back to the house where I was once told I was nothing. The applause was deafening, but more important were the quiet moments after. The young woman in tears saying I thought I was the only one. The single mom whispering, "You gave me hope." The older woman clutching my hand and saying, "I wish I'd had your courage when I was your age." That was the power of truth, not as vengeance, but as light. When I got back to New York, Maya had a question waiting for me. "Mommy, when can I visit Grandma and Grandpa again?" The question stopped me cold. "You liked seeing them?" I asked carefully. She shrugged. "They were kind of weird, but they gave me juice." I smiled. "Do you want to see them again?" She considered it seriously. "Maybe, but only if you come too." I kissed her forehead. "If we ever do, I'll be right there." It wasn't a promise of reconciliation, just of presence. That night, I journaled again. What does healing look like? Not a Hallmark reunion, not pretending it never happened, not inviting toxicity back in. Healing for me looked like control, like choice, like giving Maya something better, not perfect, just better. I didn't need a tearful reunion to validate my path. I already had that validation every time I tucked my daughter into bed and she asked me, "Did you decide this day, Mommy?" "Yes, baby, every part of it." And that was the difference. One morning in February, I saw that my father had updated his LinkedIn. Senior consultant, Turner and Cole Investments. I hadn't even asked him to add my name. I clicked through the page, saw that he had listed my firm as one of his clients, saw that he was attending webinars on impact investing and sustainability. He was trying. My mother, meanwhile, had mailed Maya a birthday card. Early. Inside was a photo of me at age 5 and a note that read, "You reminded me so much of your mother." She had that same fire in her eyes. I didn't always know how to honor that, but I see it now. Happy birthday, Maya. No gift, no overstep, just acknowledgement. I didn't frame the card, but I didn't throw it away either. That weekend, I sat Maya down. "If you want to send a card back to Grandma, you can." She thought about it. "Can I draw her a unicorn?" "You can draw her anything you want." Maya's unicorn had wings, and a crown, and glasses, because she thought that made it smarter. The next day I mailed it. No note from me, just the picture. Let the image speak for itself. Months passed. I expanded the firm again. Opened an LA office, traveled, spoke, mentored, laughed. Sometimes I heard from my parents. Small updates, measured invitations. Never pressure. They were learning. One Sunday, as Maya and I made pancakes, she said, "You're the boss, right?" "Of the pancakes," I teased. "No, of your job, your life, all of it." I paused, spatula in hand. "Yeah, I am." She nodded. "I want to be the boss too someday." "You can be." She smiled. "Good. I'll run a zoo and a space station. A bold business plan." We laughed, and in that moment I knew she would never have to ask permission to dream. Not from me, not from anyone. Because the cycle had ended with me, and something new had begun with her. In late spring, I received an unexpected notification. A house had gone on the market in Fairfield. Not just any house. The house. The one I was raised in. The one with the blue shutters and the maple tree out front that I used to climb when I needed to escape. The same house I'd walked away from at 18 with a backpack and a cracked heart. The listing was formal, clean photos, neutral staging, no hints of memory or betrayal. But I knew every inch. The creaky third stair, the squeaky faucet in the guest bath, the stain on the garage floor where I once spilled an entire gallon of paint. It was surreal. I stared at the photos for 20 minutes before clicking away. I wasn't looking to buy a house. I lived in Tribeca. I had offices in 3 cities. My life was streamlined, efficient, forward-focused. But the image lingered. That night, as I tucked Maya in, she asked her usual question. "What was your favorite part of the day?" I hesitated. "Seeing an old house," I said honestly. "Like a haunted house." "No," I laughed. "Just a house from my past." "Did you like living there?" I paused again. "Some parts, yes. Some parts, no." "Would you want to go back?" Another pause. Maybe to say goodbye properly. Maya nodded as if she understood. "I didn't schedule a viewing. I just drove there on a Sunday, alone." The open house sign was staked on the lawn. A young agent stood at the door, clipboard in hand. She greeted me with a smile, not recognizing my name. "Feel free to take your time," she said. I did. Room by room. The living room where we hosted rigid Christmases. The kitchen where my mother always insisted I make the salad because it was the easiest thing and you can't mess it up. The upstairs hallway where I once sat for hours listening to my parents argue about money pried me. The bedroom where I dreamed of escape. I stood in front of the mirror in that room. The same built-in mirror. "Do you recognize me now?" I whispered. It wasn't for anyone but me. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply stood still and rooted. After 10 minutes, I walked out without looking back. Closure doesn't always arrive as conversation. Sometimes it's just breathing freely in the space that once stole your air. I never told my parents I visited. There was nothing to say. 2 months later, I learned the house sold to a retired couple from Boston, and I felt nothing but lightness. In August, Maya and I traveled to Spain. She was obsessed with castles, and I promised her a summer of stories. One night, as we watched the sun dip behind an old stone fortress in Segovia, she leaned her head on my arm. "You know what I'm going to be when I grow up?" What I asked. A boss, and a mom, and a person who helps people who are alone. "That's a lot of things." I smiled. "Yeah, but I can be all of them. Like you." I kissed the top of her head. "Yes, you can." In that moment, surrounded by history and hope, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, but freedom. True freedom isn't just leaving. It's building something better after. That fall, I was invited to deliver the keynote at a philanthropy conference in San Francisco. I almost declined too much travel, too many obligations, but the theme caught my eye. Legacy isn't what you inherit. It's what you create. I accepted. In my speech, I didn't mention my family directly. I didn't have to. I spoke of building from broken pieces, of deciding that blood is not the only thing that defines family, of how success without peace is just noise. Afterward, a woman approached me, tears in her eyes. "You gave me permission," she whispered. "Permission for what?" "To stop chasing love that keeps moving the goalposts." I understood that too well. Later that night, I opened my journal again. What did I learn? I learned that silence can be crueler than words. That absence is sometimes protection in disguise. That not everyone who raises you is meant to walk with you forever. And that returning isn't always about going back, it can be about showing who you've become. I closed the journal. When I got back to New York, there was a voicemail. My father, Just wanted to say, we saw your speech. Your mother cried. I did too, though I'll never admit it again. Maya looked beautiful on stage. You did good, kid. Always proud, even when we didn't know how to show it. I didn't call back, but I didn't delete it either. That Christmas, I mailed them a card. Not a long note, just a photo. Me and Maya, on the cliffs of Mallorca, wind in our hair, sunlight on our faces. No caption, just proof of life, proof of joy. That was enough. That would always be enough.